Hello, my name is Diego Felipe Riano. I'm from Bogota, Colombia, and I'm 26 years old. I'm doing this video with the purpose of applying to the A-levels economics teacher at the Changshu International School. In this video, I will touch the topic, the causes of inflation. So now, let's take a look to it, okay? So before we start, I would like to apologize because I was not able to put myself in an environment that resembles a classroom. So we won't have the interaction of any students, and we won't have extra materials like, for example, a blackboard where I can actually write and explain with more detail what is happening. But I hope I am able to express myself clearly and explain all the concepts in a very clear form. I hope you understand, and I appreciate your understanding. So, justify that, let's start now. Okay, so as a good economic class, we're going to start with some assumptions. We can assume that in this class we will have 20 to 25 students. These students are going to be part of the 9th grade, so it means their age is around 14 years old. These students will have already some economic background. For that, then they will understand concepts like supply and demand mechanism, price elasticity of the supply and demand, cost of production, aggregate supply and aggregate demand, aggregate output, consumer price index, and will have some notion of the inflation and how to calculate it. With this class, we're looking for them to achieve the following objectives. The first one is to go deeper into the knowledge on what it means, the inflation. And then we will go on what are the causes of inflation, why do we have inflation, and what are the nature of these causes, if they come from the cost or if they come from the demand, from the supply or the demand. Then we will take a look of the consequences of the inflation. What are the consequences of the inflation, if they're positive or they're negative, what are the consequences for the economy. And finally, we will see the factors affecting the consequences of inflation. This is why these factors affect in this way the inflation. Given this, then we will start the class now. Okay, so let's just start the class right now. So, kids, last class we saw a very important topic. Do you remember which topic was this? We learned a very important concept. Can you tell me which one was that? Yes, very good, you're right. We talk about the inflation. And can any of you tell me what's the definition of inflation? We should be all already familiar with the term, right? So how about there? Yes, it's the increase of the prices. But let's be a little bit more technical with the definition. It's the increase in the general price level in an economy. Remember, we used the example that inflation is similar like a fever in the human body, okay? So it's kind of like a measure to tell if things are going well or not. But we should also remember that inflation is a rate that is measured in terms of percentage. And this percentage measure the variation of the level of prices, okay? Very good. So now you tell me. We learned two methods to measure this rate. Do you remember which are these two methods, please? Over there in the background? Yes? Excellent, very good. Consumer Price Index, CPI, very good. And then we have the second method. How about here in the first line? Variation of the GDP? You're close, but it's not quite so. Is the GDP deflator, remember? The GDP deflator is different than just the GDP. The GDP deflator we calculated by having the nominal GDP divided by the real GDP and multiplied by 100, okay? Don't forget that. GDP is different from GDP deflator. If you still have some doubts of last class or today's class, but you can approach me at the end of this class and we will resolve them, okay? Anyway, today's topic we will review it next class. Very good. So now that we have this clear, let's start with today's topic. Okay, so now we know the definition of inflation, but we still don't know what are the causes of inflation. why do we have inflation? So can any of you try to guess or give you an idea why do you think we have inflation in the economy? It seems you are a little bit confused, a little bit shy. So let me change the question. Why do you think producers need to rise their prices? Or why do you think consumers would buy more or would be willing to pay a bigger price for the same product? What do you think? A producer will increase prices to make more money. Yes, of course. Yes. Okay, that's interesting. It's not a bad answer. Thank you. No more guesses? Okay. So let me show you. We can divide the causes of inflation in two big groups. Okay? The ones that come from the side of the supply and the ones that come from the side of the demand. Let's take a look. The ones that come from the side of the supply are called cost-push inflation. As the name says it comes from the increase in the cost of the production. Okay? So it means that every product will cost more to be produced. So how does this affect the prices? Well, the producers would like to have the same level of profit, the same level of benefit. But if the raw materials, the cost of production increase, then they won't be making the same level of production, right? Therefore, they will move that cost of production and pass it to the consumers. How will they do that? Well, by increasing prices. Therefore, people will pay more and they will have the same level of benefit. We'll be taking a deeper look to that, okay? Now let's see the other branch. The other branch is the demand pull inflation. And as you can see, it comes from the side of the demand. So how does the demand affect the prices? Well, if the consumers suddenly decide to buy more or pay more for the products, then it will mean that it will be some scarcity on the products. We won't have the same number of products in the market since they are buying more or people are paying more for them. Therefore, the prices will rise in order to catch up with the demand. If people is buying more, then the production can just rise the prices because people is willing to buy them. And if people is paying more, well, the production can also raise prices because people is willing to buy more. Right? Okay, let's take a better look to both of them. Let's start with cost push inflation. Okay, now let's talk about the cost push inflation, which was the first item we were talking about. So as we were saying, it's when the prices are pushed up by the increase in the cost of production. So the cost of production increase, therefore the producers want to have the same level of benefit or profit. So in order to have the same level of profit, what will they do? Well, they will increase prices. So as the prices of production increase, the price of the final product also increase. So we can see how the increase in the cost of production actually is passed to the final consumer. So how can we see that in a graphic? Let's take a look. Here we have our graphic with the aggregate supply and aggregate demand. In the axis we will have the price of equilibrium, we have already seen this before, the level price, and the aggregate output. We have our point of equilibrium A, that is when the curve of aggregate demand and the first aggregate supply will intersect. We have our point A with Q star and P star as our level price optimum and aggregate output optimum. So, what happens when we have an increase in the cost of production? Well, the curve of aggregate supply will move up and left, as we see here, in the direction that are pointing the arrows. And we will have this new curve of aggregate supply 1. We will have also a new point of equilibrium B with a new price level of equilibrium and a new aggregate output of equilibrium, Q1 and P1. As we can see, prices did go up, which we were talking about. and this is, well, a reason of inflation. But let's take a look also at the aggregate output. Q1, the new aggregate output, is actually smaller than Q star. So you could see that actually a rise in the cost of production, will generate a decrease in the aggregate output. But what can cause an increase in the cost of production? Let's take a look. High wages, for example. High wages, the wages are one big part actually of the cost of production. So if the wages increase, of course, we will go through the same process we were talking about. The wages increase, the cost of production increase, the producer wants to have the same level of profit. I will translate that to the final product, where the consumers will pay the price, a higher price. A fall in the exchange rate. When we're talking a fall in the exchange rate, it's because one of the raw materials from the product is actually imported, is in another country, and we have to buy it from another country. So what happens when the exchange rate falls? It's that our country is becoming, let's say, cheaper in comparison to another country. So the raw materials in another country actually are becoming more expensive. So we have to pay more for the same product that is in another country. Therefore, if we have to pay more, we have an increase of the cost of production. Again, we go to the same process. The producers want to have the same level of profit and then translate that increase of the cost to the prices, increase the prices, and the final consumer pays the price. Then we have high prices for important components. It's very similar to what we were talking about, just with the exception that this is an important component regardless of what it is. If this component his price rise, then the whole cost of production will rise. We want to have the same level of profit, then the producers raise the price and the final consumer pay a higher price. One example of this, for example, can be the oil. If the prices of the oil go higher, it's more expensive, let's say, to have some transportation of the products or to move cars or the machinery. Therefore, it's more expensive to actually produce the same product. And we will have all the processes we already talked about that finish with an increase of the prices. One other way to see a cost-push inflation is an increase in business tax. This is not specifically related with the production, but is the suppliers is a cost that the suppliers have to pay. Therefore, if the producers need to pay a higher tax, then their profit will be reduced. And if they want to have the same level of profit again, they will charge for higher prices. Okay? If it's clear, we will continue to the next point. Is it clear? Any questions? Okay, no questions. Very good. You're understanding very well. Let's take a look now to the next part. Okay, now in the second branch we had the demand pull inflation. So what is the demand pull inflation? It's when prices are pulled up by the increase in the aggregate demand that are not matched with the equivalent increase in aggregate supply. So what does this mean? In other words, this means that people is demanding much more than the economy can supply. Therefore, we can tell that there will be scarcity of products. There won't be as many products in the market because people is buying more and more and more. Therefore, the prices of these products will increase because they become more unique, because there are not so many in the market, right? How can we see this in the graphic we had before? Here we have it. Again, we have the level of prices and the aggregated output. We have the same initial point of equilibrium A, where is the intersection of the curve of aggregate supply and the aggregate demand. We have the level of prices P star, the equilibrium, and Q star, aggregate output in the equilibrium. Okay, so what happened when there is a shift in the demand? There is an increase in the demand. Well, we have a new curve of aggregate demand, AD1, that moves to the right, as we see with the arrows here. We have a new point of equilibrium B, where we have the new aggregate output Q1 a new level of prices, P1. So if we take a look here in the level of prices, we see we also have inflation, as in the case before. P1 is higher than P star. But the difference is gonna be here in the aggregate output, when Q1 is actually higher than Q star, which is the opposite what happened with an increase of the cost of production. So we can tell that an increase in the demand will actually produce an increase in the price and an increase in the aggregate output, here at the point of equilibrium B. So what would actually generate an increase in the demand? Well, we can have, for example, a consumer boom. What is a consumer boom? But many people is buying a lot and paying a lot for the same prices. But we don't see many of those. So an example of this, for example, could be, let's say, that the government now only allows electric cars to go on the street. Since many people don't have electric cars and they have the need to use a car, the transportation, they will all run to the markets, take the money from their accounts, from the savings, and go and buy all an electric car. Therefore, there is much more money running through the system right now. People is putting all the money to buy electric cars. Since everyone is buying electric cars, the company that buys electric cars, maybe they will rise the prices of the electric cars now. All that money will end up actually in the pockets of the employers of that company, that will also go to the economy, to the market, and be able to buy more things, right? So we will have more money in the economy, therefore the prices of the whole economy will be pushed up. And the fact that this is the reason why you are spending more allows people to, well, as we say, spend more money and have a higher aggregate output. Another option we can see this scenario is in a rise of the government spending. The government spending is one of the few actors of the economy that can actually have the capability to create a change in inflation, because they manage a very high volume of money, right? Not everyone manages the same level of money as the government. So when will the government spend their money? Maybe the government will spend that money when they are paying the debt, for example. They can spend money in infrastructure. When they have big projects of infrastructure, they will spend their money over there. And when they are buying financial instruments, like bonds, for example. So in the same process, for example, if the government is spending in infrastructure, they will have to pay a company, and the company will pay to the employers, and these employers will go to the market and be able to buy more, right? So therefore we have more money in the economy, more people buying more things. Therefore the prices of the whole economy will go up, and since we have more people with the capability of buying more, then the aggregate output will increase. Another case is the high business confidence. This comes more as if the economy is performing well, the foreign investors will look with good eyes our economy. If we're performing well, these investors will put their money into our economy. Therefore, we have more money in our market. Let's say they decide to establish their company, their foreign company, in our country. We have a creation of jobs, we have more investment, and that money will go to the pockets of the employers of the company, and they will also go to the market and be able to buy more things. Now that we're talking about money in the economy, we have a branch of economy called the monetarism. The people who follow the monetarism says that they consider that inflation is caused by an excess of growth in the money supply. So some examples of that is what we were talking about. The government or foreign investors put more money into the economy, therefore people is able to buy more, or there's more people buying things or people is able to pay higher prices. Therefore, we have a shift in the price and an increase in the aggregate output. Okay, if we have understood these two causes of inflation, now let's see what are the consequences of this inflation. Because inflation will have two types of consequences, positive and negative, right? The negative will be costs that we will incur into the economy, and the positive will be some benefits for the economy overall. So first, let's take a look to the costs, okay? The potential costs of having inflation. Let's take a look to the first one. Reduction in net exports. Well, why do you think we will have reduction in the net exports, guys? Why do you say? Well, this one is a little bit easy, because if you think about it, our products are more expensive now, right? We have inflation, well, prices increase, and our products are going to be more expensive. If we look around the world, maybe other countries don't have inflation, therefore other products are not becoming more expensive, right? If I'm an international buyer and I see that in the country I used to buy the prices are going up, maybe I will think that I should go to another country to buy the same product, right? So many buyers actually do this, and the country with inflation will export less. Therefore, we will see a reduction in the net exports. Let's take a look to the second point. Unplanned redistribution of income. Well, here we have to talk about the interest rate. Well, we know that when we have inflation, we are losing purchasing power, right? Well, when we have an interest rate, we are aiming to have a little bit of comeback from that purchasing power we are losing. The higher the interest rate, we will receive more. But what happens when we have a loan, for example? If we have a loan that is tied to an interest rate, if the interest rate is lower than the inflation rate, if we are of course the one who are supposed to pay the interest, then it means we're paying less than we pay before the inflation, because the inflation is higher than the interest rate. We will be paying less. But what happens if you are the lender, the one who gave the money, and you're expected to receive some interest? If the interest is lower than the inflation rate, then it means they will pay you a lower value that is actually losing purchasing power. Therefore, you have a cost because of the inflation. If it's clear, have questions? It's a little bit confusing, right? We have to take in account the interest rate, okay? And we have to take in account which side of the loan in this case will we be, okay? Very good. Let's take a look. Menu cost. So this is very easy to understand. When we have inflation, of course what happens? The prices rise. If we have a menu, you see normally the prices are fixed. You cannot change it. Maybe, but not all of them can be changed. So you will have actually to change the menu if the prices rise. Therefore, if you want to change a menu, you need to put some of your resources to change the menu. You need to have time, you need to put your staff to work on it, and you need to put money. Therefore, you have to pay a cost because the prices rise. This is very easy to understand, right? Okay, very good. Shoe leather cost. We have talked about the interest rate before, right? So, as we said, inflation will make us lose purchase power. But if we have the right interest rate, we can keep or even increase our purchase power. So, what happens is normally the interest rate doesn't move as fast as the inflation. Therefore, people will look for alternatives to put their money and protect themselves from inflation. Let's put an example. We have our money in our bank account. In our bank account, the bank told us that we have a certain level of interest each year just to have the money in the bank, right? We will put our money there and we will give us an interest for the money we have in the bank. But what happens if we have inflation? Then we have inflation, and the inflation is higher than the interest rate the bank is giving us. Therefore, we're losing purchasing power. If the interest rate is the same as the inflation rate, then we keep the same level of purchasing power. But if it's not, people will go out to the market to search for an interest rate that will help us to shield themselves against the losing power, purchasing power from the inflation. But going out to the market, taking the money from your bank or from any place you have the money and put it in some other place also have its costs. So this cost, we will call it shoe leather cost. Okay? Now we have the fiscal drag. Okay, so equally as the prices increase in an inflation, well, the taxes will also increase with inflation. So for example, one of the items that increase with inflation is the wage, right? We talked about the wage before. But what happens is sometimes tax don't actually match the level of inflation. Can rise less or can rise more. Therefore, when the inflation is actually controlled by the government, or the inflation is controlled itself, then we will look at the new brackets of taxes, for example. Let's talk about how the taxes work with the wages, for example. If we have an income, let's say, from 500 yuan to 2,000 yuan, they will charge us 5% in taxes. Then if we have from 2,000 to 5,000, they will charge us 10%. And so we can go up. But what happens when our income increase not because we have a rise, but because of inflation? Then the taxes will also adjust to that change, but not always in the same proportion as the inflation. Therefore, there will still a difference between how your income will change with inflation and how well tax will change with that adjust of inflation. That difference is called the bracket creep. Okay? It's clear? It's maybe a little bit not so easy to understand the first time, okay? If you have questions, you can let me know. Any question? No questions. Very good. Then we have the discouragement of investment. When we have inflation in an economy, especially when it's a high or a not predictable inflation, then investors won't like to put their money there. For example, I'm going to use the example of a restaurant. What about that? If we go to a restaurant and we normally go to a restaurant, and if this restaurant we normally see the food and the prices of the food are normally the same, or the variation of the prices is very small, right? It increased very small. But what happens if we start seeing that the prices start going up and going up and going up? Well, maybe we will choose not to go more to that restaurant, and we will choose to go to another restaurant, right? And maybe in other restaurants the prices will still be the same. That happens the same in the economy. Our country is the restaurant that has inflation, which means the prices of our food will go up. And the customers around the world, the foreign investors, won't like to see the prices going up and up. So if they have other alternatives to go to other countries, it will be easier for them. It will be more safe. Therefore, if we have inflation, we will have less investment. Inflationary noise. This is also a little bit tricky, so please pay attention, special attention. So, we know that inflation rate will increase the price of the products. For example, if we have a product that is 10 yuan at the end of the period, this product will the price of this product will be 11 yuan. But sometimes consumers and producers will misunderstand the reason behind the inflation. As we saw, there are different reasons to have inflation. If for example, a consumer see that the price of a product, let's say the same 10 yuan product, increase to 10.5, he will be discouraged to actually buy the product because he thinks it's more expensive. But if we look at inflation, the inflation was 10%, which means the product should be 11 yuan, right? So it means that this product only increased by 5%, which is less than inflation. It means actually that this product become cheaper considering the inflation. Is it clear? It's a little bit hard to understand, right? If your product is supposed to be 11 at the end of the period, but then end up being 10.5, it means that actually it's cheaper than it should be, regardless of the increase of 5 yuan in 5 mao, that we have from the beginning of the period, right? Okay, we'll answer some questions of that at the end of the class, okay? And to finish with the potential cost, we have inflation causing inflation. When we have the policymakers will tell us at the beginning of a period what is the expected inflation for a year. So normally people will try to anticipate the change of the prices and buy a lot of things before the actual change. But what we saw before, if people is going out to the market and buying more and more, they will actually create an increase in prices from the side of the demand, right? So the actual announce that there will be inflation actually creates inflation. Okay. Also, producers will try to adjust to this prediction of inflation. I will say, like, oh, okay, the policymakers said that inflation is going to be 10%. So maybe I will prepare and my prices will also rise 10% because my production cost will increase. So I will be prepared. So as you see, just for that, the inflation will cause more inflation. Okay, so now we have finished the potential cost. Now let's start with the potential benefits of having inflation. Let's take a look. One of them is stimulating the output. I told you before that we can take a look to the inflation like it was the human body. Inflation, it would be the equivalent to a fever. If our temperature is very high, it means something is wrong with us. The same happens with inflation. And if the inflation is the body temperature is very low, it's also something not going right with us. The same happens with inflation. In this case, if we have a low inflation and a steady inflation, this actually could create incentives for investors to put their money inside our economy. Also, if the rising prices is higher than the cost of production of the products, this will actually allow producers to have some savings that will actually maybe use for further investment. Other potential benefit is the reduce of the burden of the debt. We have talked about the interest rate before, right? So for example, if the interest rate is lower than the inflation rate, then the person with the loan, with the debt, will actually be paying less in real terms for that loan. So if we have again a lower interest rate, we will pay less in real terms. Actually, the real interest rate will actually go down or even be negative because the nominal interest rate won't grow in the same line of the inflation rate, right? Okay, we have talked about this before, so we will continue. prevent some unemployment. Let's see. If we have a company that is not performing very well, and suddenly we find ourselves in a situation of inflation, we will see that our prices will increase. This is actually a good thing for my company that is not performing so well, because we will receive extra revenue. Of course, our employers might demand a higher wage, but if the company is not doing very good, what we can do is keep the wages the same it is and just leave the raise for the employers with the higher bargain abilities. Also, we can use that extra revenue, if we are not bad, to actually hire more employers, right? We can see that happening. We have higher prices because of the inflation. Therefore, we have higher revenue. We keep the salaries the same, so our production cost does increase. But we can use it either to improve the situation of my company, or give it a raise to the best employers, or even to hire new employers if our company is performing well. Okay? Do you have any question about the cost and benefits for the inflation? I think they are clear by now. Okay? But if you have questions, please raise your hand and let me know. No questions. Okay, let's continue then. Okay, now let's assume we're in an economy that has inflation. How can we tell if these inflations will bring some potential costs or some potential benefits? So for this, we need to take a look to the factors affecting the consequences of inflation. Let's see, the effects of inflation will depend on the causes of inflation. We saw previously the two branches of the causes of inflation, the cost push and the demand pull. In the cost push, we saw the production cost will increase and the aggregate output will decrease. Therefore, it might bring some potential cost to the economy. On the other hand, the demand pull inflation will move the aggregate demand to the right, and with it will also bring an increase to the aggregate output. Therefore, it could bring some potential benefit to the economy. Then we also have the rate. We said that the inflation rate works similarly to the fever. If an economy has a high inflation rate, we could say that the economy has a fever. Actually, if the inflation rate is negative, which can also happen, we can also say that there is something wrong with the economy. For example, if we have our body, the temperature is very high, we have a fever. But if the temperature is very low, we have hypothermia. So it's the same with the economy. We need to have the appropriate temperature. In the economy, some economists debate what is the right temperature, the right rate, the correct rate. It might vary from economy to economy, but it's said that it should be between 3 and 6%. It will also depend on whether the rate is accelerating or is stable. If it's accelerating, we talk about the example of the restaurant, we will see that prices go high and high and high. Therefore, we would like to change to another restaurant where the prices are more stable, right? So, if the prices are accelerating, the foreign investors would like to move and put their money in other countries. If the rate is stable, they will decide to stay. Whether the rate is the one that has been expected. We also talked about this before. If it's expected, people will have trust in the policymakers and will say that they actually know and understand the factors affecting the inflation. If it's not expected, it will create uncertainty and people will move their investments from our economy to another economy where the inflation is actually expected. And also how the rate compares with that of other countries. Maybe our economy is not doing so bad. We have a more or less stable inflation and is kind of control. But if our neighbor has a better monetary control, has a better control on the inflation, is not accelerating, is stable, is lower than ours, the investment from the foreign investors will move to that country because it's more attractive than ours, even if ours is not doing so bad. Okay. Okay, so now let's finish the class for today. I will leave you a very easy homework, okay? It's about the next topic, deflation and disinflation. So your homework consists in finding a country where the inflation is decreasing or is negative. There are not so many, so it should be easy for you to find it. They're very special. And try to figure out why this country has an inflation like this. Okay? So, see you next class. We will discuss the new topic, and if you have questions, please approach to me. We will take a look at your doubts. Thank you. Goodbye. Okay, so like this we finished this demonstration class. And again, sorry for not being able to provide a better environment for the class. This felt actually more like a lecture because there was no interaction between the students and the teacher. Also, I couldn't provide other elements for the class like a blackboard to explain better some parts of the class like the graphics. But I guess we focused on the important topics, which was the understanding the background of the inflation. So I appreciate your time and your consideration, and thank you so much.